Here's the reading for pages 201 to 204 in the Human Odyssey. So we're in part 2, chapter 5, the Buddha's teaching and legacy. The Buddha's quest for understanding began with the question of suffering. Why is there suffering? How can human beings become free from suffering? After his experience of enlightenment, the Buddha gave a name to freedom from suffering. He called it nirvana. Nirvana means blowing out the flame, or putting out what the Buddha said were inner fires of greed, hatred, and ignorance. The Buddha said that nirvana is the highest goal for human beings who seek to end the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. When a person reaches nirvana, he no longer knows suffering. Pain cannot touch him. He is free. What about reincarnation? The Buddha taught that a person could escape from the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth when he reaches nirvana. A person could live many times without reaching nirvana, since reaching it had nothing to do with caste. A Shudra worker might reach nirvana in just one lifetime. A learned Brahmin priest might never reach it. It all depended on how a man or woman acted. This idea that people's actions, not their caste, determined their fate was new to the people of India. It provided hope. By deeds a person is a Brahmin. By deeds a person is an outcast, said the Buddha. Good deeds and thoughts help a person reach nirvana, and each must reach nirvana through his own efforts. No priest or offering to the gods could help. In fact, the Buddha said people did not need the Brahmin priests. They could find the truth themselves. And then this is the hand of Buddha in a gesture that symbolizes teaching. That's interesting. And then over here is a monk at prayer outside a Buddhist shrine. So if you look in your books, you can see that full picture. Okay. Pursuing the path to nirvana. According to the Buddha, all life is a great wheel of suffering. The Buddha taught that people suffer because they want worldly things such as wealth or power, and no matter how much they get, they always want more. Great unhappiness follows upon desire, and desire leads to ever-increasing desire, and so the wheel of suffering goes round and round without end. If life is a great wheel of suffering, is there any escape? Yes, said the Buddha. To begin, it is necessary to understand what the Buddha taught as the Four Noble Truths. First, all life is suffering. Second, suffering is caused by our desires and greed. Third, there can be an end to suffering and desires. Fourth, there is a path to nirvana. How could people find that path to nirvana? The Buddha said that people should follow the middle way. This means that they should not desire great pleasures, such as strong drink, rich foods, or great luxury. At the same time, they should not impose great hardships on themselves, such as fasting or other forms of self-denial. They should live between these extremes. The Buddha also preached an eightfold noble path to live a good life and to reach nirvana. The path was right understanding, seek knowledge of the truth, right effort, trying to resist evil, right speech, saying nothing untrue or hurtful about others, right action, acting virtuously, right livelihood, doing work that does not harm others, right mindfulness, striving to have no evil thoughts, right thought, controlling feelings and ideas, and right concentration, training thoughts through meditation. And so here is that wheel of Dhamma. Buddhists believe all life is a great wheel of suffering. They have a wheel as their symbol. The Buddhist symbol is the wheel of Dhamma. Dhamma is the teaching that Buddhists believe turns the self onto the path to nirvana. Okay, and there's a picture of that. Okay, and then living the Eightfold Noble Path. The Buddha said people progress towards nirvana by pursuing this Eightfold Noble Path. They grow in compassion and love for all living beings, even animals and insects. This meant, among other things, that people should not kill an animal for meat. They should not get rid of insects that are eating crops. They should treat animals with kindness and respect. Such creatures, the Buddha taught, also have selves. Indeed, they might have once been human beings in a previous life. Once a student asked the Buddha, how can I advance toward nirvana? The Buddha gave this advice: speak the truth, do not give in to anger, give generously to those who ask. The Buddha said that each person has to find nirvana alone. A person cannot learn from a teacher. The teacher can only point the way. But, said the Buddha, the man or woman who has reached nirvana is like a great rock. The wind does not make the rock tremble. So pain and praise do not make the man or woman tremble. Nirvana, he said, frees people from fear and pain. It also frees them from the cycle of rebirth. The Buddha as a teacher and model. For the rest of his life, the Buddha went from place to place, teaching all who would listen. He and his students traveled along the Ganges River, visiting River Valley, visiting many towns and villages. Wherever they went, people admired his joy and peacefulness. Some of the men and women who heard him became monks and nuns, men and women who devoted their lives to his teachings. After the Buddha's death, his followers wanted to remember his teaching. For a long time, they passed on what they had learned by word of mouth. Finally, 4 centuries after the Buddha's death, his talks and stories were collected in books of writings. Many Buddhists throughout the world still study these writings today. People also began making statues of the Buddha. The statues help them remember his life and teachings. So here's a stone statue of the Buddha meditating in a typical cross-legged position. And then down here, a modern day monk instructs a young novice in Buddhist teachings. All right, a little bit more to read here. Some people began to think of the Buddha as a deity or a god. They believed that he had come to save men and women from pain and unhappiness, and that the Buddha could help them if they prayed to him. Today, some Buddhists think of the Buddha as a man and teacher. Others think of him as a god and focus for prayer. The ideas of the Buddha have lasted for more than 2.5 millennia and spread to many countries. As they spread, people in different areas transformed some of those ideas. They gave to Buddhism the characteristics of their own cultures. On a certain day in Thailand, for example, children celebrate the Buddha's birthday by decorating little boats with flowers and candles. At sunset, they set the boats afloat in the river. In Tibet, men chant Buddhist prayers in a temple built in their own national style. In Japan, a housewife offers a bowl of rice before a statue of the Buddha. All these people speak different languages. They all have different customs, but they have one thing in common. They are all Buddhists. How did Buddhism spread to these different lands? In the 3rd century BC, eager monks set out from India to spread the teachings of the Buddha. Those first missionaries, however, got help from an unlikely source, a warrior king. And here this picture is a young Thai boy preparing to become a Buddhist monk, dons a flower headpiece, and takes part in a festival. All right, so that is that reading for 201 to 204.